Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for what is probably one of the biggest thought experiments in all of philosophy. We're going right to the heart of the mind-body problem.
We really are. We're talking about the one argument that has, for decades, been seen as the ultimate challenge to physicalism. The idea that consciousness, and really everything else, is fundamentally physical.
And that challenge, of course, is the philosophical zombie. Now, if you're new to this, we're not talking about the movie kind of zombie.
No, not at all. A philosophical zombie, or a P-zombie, is a hypothetical being that is your perfect physical twin.
Down to the last atom.
Every single one.
Yeah.
Every molecule, every neuron firing in its brain is an exact replica of yours. It behaves exactly like you. You stub your toe and yell, ow, and your P-zombie twin does the exact same thing.
And this is the whole point, on the inside, there's nothing.
Exactly. Total darkness. The lights are on, but nobody's home. There's no subjective experience, no phenomenal consciousness. There's no what it is like to be them. They're just a sort of biological machine running a program.
And the consensus in philosophy, the standard orthodoxy for a very long time, has been pretty clear on this.
Oh, absolutely. The argument was, if these zombies are even metaphysically possible.
Meaning, if you can coherently conceive of them without some kind of logical contradiction,
then physicalism has to be false. The whole project of explaining the world in purely physical terms just collapses.
Because if the physical stuff can exist without the mental experience, then the mental experience must be something extra, something non-physical.
That's the traditional link, yeah.
Yeah.
It goes back to Descartes, really, but it was sharpened by people like Kripke. It demands that for physicalism to be true, the physical facts have to necessitate the mental facts.
But the physical blueprint has to guarantee the conscious experience. It has to be that way in every possible reality.
Right. And if you can find just one possible reality, the zombie world, where the blueprint exists without the experience, then that necessary link is broken.
Okay, so with that entire massive debate as our backdrop, our mission for this deep dive is to explore a really radical new way of thinking about this, a systematic form of physicalism that completely flips the table.
It's a view that says physicalism is, I'm quoting here, perfectly compatible with the possibility of zombies.
Wow. Okay, so this isn't about fighting the zombie argument anymore.
Not at all. This approach, called contingent grounding physicalism, or CGP, accepts it. It says, fine, let's say zombies are possible. But it denies the next crucial step. It argues that the possibility of zombies doesn't actually refute physicalism in our world.
So it decouples possibility from falsity, and it does this using a concept called metaphysical grounding.
Yes, but with a huge twist. It allows the rules of grounding, the very structure of reality, to be metaphysically contingent.
Okay, so let's unpack that. This is a huge strategic shift. Instead of fighting over whether we can imagine zombies, we're going to be talking about the fundamental rules of reality itself. We are, in a sense, reframing the entire debate.
To really see how bold this new idea is, we have to start with the old one. We have to understand the orthodox view and why it's so powerful.
The necessity assumption, the idea that physicalism is only true if the physical necessitates the mental. Why was that so central?
It's all about explanatory completeness. I mean, if you're a physicalist, you believe the physical world is the whole story.
The complete story.
The complete story. So any fact about the world, whether it's about, a rock or the feeling of pain, has to follow logically from the fundamental physical facts. David Lewis put it perfectly. He said physicalists have to hold that a physical description of the world is a complete description of it.
So the mental facts have to follow from the physical ones by metaphysical necessity.
Exactly. The usual thought experiment is, when God created the universe. The traditional physicalist says God only had to do one thing. Fix all the fundamental physical facts and laws.
The particles, the forces, the quantum fields, the whole shebang.
Right. And once all that is set, everything else, chemistry, biology, consciousness, just sort of automatically comes into being. It's entailed by the physics. God doesn't need to go back and, sprinkle in some extra non-physical consciousness stuff.
And that necessity, that guarantee across all possible worlds is exactly what the zombie argument is designed to attack.
It's the perfect weapon against it.
Let's lay out the classic structure of that argument, just to be crystal clear.
It's famously tight. Premise 1, zombies are conceivable. We feel like we can imagine a physical duplicate without the inner experience.
And that this isn't like imagining a married bachelor. It doesn't seem to be a logical contradiction on its face.
Right. Premise 2. If something is conceivable in this way, it's metaphysically possible. Our imagination is a decent guide to what could exist in some possible world.
So from those two, you get premise 3. Therefore, zombies are metaphysically possible. A zombie world could exist.
Now for the killer blow. Premise 4. If zombies are possible, physicalism is false. And this premise rests entirely on that necessity assumption we just talked about.
Because if the physical facts, let's call them P, can exist in one world without the mental facts, M,
The zombie world.
then P does not necessitate M, and so physicalism is false.
And the conclusion is inescapable. Physicalism is false.
So historically, where did physicalists push back?
Almost all the energy, for decades, went into attacking premise 1.
The conceivability part.
Exactly. They argued that our intuition is just wrong, that if we really understood the neuroscience, the complexity of the brain, we'd see that consciousness is baked into that physical structure. We'd realize a zombie is as incoherent as a four-sided triangle.
You can't separate the hardware from the subjective experience because the experience is just what the hardware does when it's arranged that way.
That was the hope. But, that argument has been notoriously difficult to make stick. The intuition that they are separable is incredibly powerful.
And this is where CGP comes in and does something completely different.
It's a brilliant strategic pivot, it says. Let's just grant them premises 1, 2, and 3. Let's say, okay, fine, zombies are possible. Let the zombie world, let's call it W2, exist.
And then it attacks premise 4. It attacks the link itself.
It attacks the idea that the possibility of zombies automatically means physicalism is false in our world, W1.
To really see this, we need to be very precise about these two worlds. So W1 is our world.
Right. Our world, W1, has a complete set of fundamental physical facts, P1, P2, and so on. And in our world, Jane is in pain. That's a mental fact, M.
And the zombie world, W2.
W2 is, by definition, a perfect physical duplicate. It has the exact same set of fundamental physical facts, P1, P2, and so on. But in W2, there are no phenomenal facts. So we have all the P facts, but we also have not, and Jane's zombie twin is not in pain.
And you can see the trap for the traditional physicalist.
It's a perfect trap. They have to say that P necessitates M. So if P exists in W2, M must exist in W2. But that contradicts the very definition of W2. So their only option is to deny that W2 can exist at all.
But CGP says, no, there's another way out. We can accept that W2 is possible, but still insist that in our world, W1, the mental is completely derived from the physical.
It's about finding a way to describe that dependence that is really, really strong. A kind of determination, but one that isn't necessary across all possible worlds. It's dependence without necessity.
And that means we can't use the old tools. The idea of supervenience, for example, is out the window.
Right, because supervenience just is a statement about necessity. It says once you fix the physical facts, you fix all the facts. CGP says that's not quite right. We need a new tool.
So if the link isn't necessity, how do we express this idea that the mental is still fully dependent on the physical? This is where metaphysical grounding comes onto the scene.
Yes. And it's important to slow down here and really define what we mean by grounding.
Because it's a technical term.
It is. Grounding is a primitive relation of, let's say, metaphysical determination. It's not causal, like one domino knocking over the next. It's about what makes something the case. It's often expressed with the phrase, in virtue of.
So if we say fact delta is grounded in fact gamma, we mean that delta obtains in virtue of gamma obtaining.
Exactly. Think of it as a kind of hierarchy. The existence of a table is grounded in the arrangement of its constituent molecules. The existence of a nation is grounded in the facts about its people and institutions.
The ground is always more fundamental than the thing being grounded. It stratifies reality into levels.
And that's the perfect tool for the physicalist. It allows them to redefine their position. Physicalism is no longer a claim about necessity across all worlds. It becomes a claim about priority in our world.
So let's define this new version, grounding physicalism.
Okay, so grounding physicalism makes two core claims. One, the fundamental level of reality, the ground floor, is entirely physical.
No spooky stuff at the bottom.
No spooky stuff at the bottom. And all other facts, including mental facts like being in pain, are fully grounded in those fundamental physical facts, P1, P2, etc.
So in our world, W1, the fact that Jane is in pain is grounded in a bunch of physical facts about her brain.
Right. And we can write that as G. In W1, M is grounded in P. This seems to capture the core physicalist idea that the mental is nothing over and above the physical, it's derivative.
But you can immediately see the old problem creeping back in, can't you?
Yes, because most theorists of grounding, especially early on, thought grounding had to be a necessary connection. This was called the necessitation principle.
Which says? What exactly?
It says that if delta is grounded in gamma, then it is metaphysically necessary that if gamma obtains, delta obtains, the little box symbol for necessity.
So if the table's existence is grounded in these molecules, then in any possible world where those molecules are arranged in that way, the table must exist.
Right. And if pain is grounded in C fibers firing, then in any possible world where those C fibers are firing, pain must exist.
And there's the zombie argument all over again.
Right back at you. If we accept grounding,
Yeah.
G, and we accept necessitation, then we have to conclude that M exists in the zombie world, W2, because P exists there. And that's a direct contradiction of how we define W2.
So it seems we're back where we started. The physicalist has to deny either the zombie world or the grounding relation.
But CGP says there's a third option. This is the radical break. It says we reject the necessitation principle, at least for the psychophysical case.
We reject the idea that grounding must be necessary.
We say the grounding connection itself can be contingent. And if we do that, we can coherently hold both things at once. We can say that in our world, W1P grounds M, but in the zombie world, W2P exists, but it fails to ground M.
Okay, but what's the cost of that? I mean, wasn't grounding supposed to be this super strong explanatory relation precisely because it was necessary? If you make it contingent, doesn't it just become some weird, unexplained correlation?
That's the main objection, and it's a powerful one. Traditionalists would say if it's not necessary, it's not really grounding. It's just a coincidence.
It feels like a metaphysical shrug. Why does P ground M here but not there? If the answer is just because, that's not very satisfying.
I agree. It can't be a brute fact. If CGP is going to be a real theory, it needs to explain the difference between W1 and W2. And since the physical facts P are identical in both worlds, the explanation can't be found in the facts themselves.
So the explanation has to come from somewhere else, something outside the facts that, governs them.
Exactly. Something that governs how those facts get structured into a reality.
Okay, so we need some third element to explain why P generates M in our world, but not in the zombie world. The outline mentions an initial attempt that doesn't quite work. Conditional grounding.
Right. This is the first idea you might have. Maybe the grounding relation is conditional. You could say M is grounded in P, but only if some other background condition, C, is met.
So in our world, C is met. And in the zombie world, it isn't. Problem solved.
It seems like it at first, but it falls apart when you ask what C is. Remember, the zombie world W2 is a perfect physical duplicate of our world.
Ah, right. So if C is a fundamental physical fact, it has to exist in W2 as well.
And if C is a derivative fact, then it must itself be grounded in some fundamental physical facts. But those fundamental facts also exist in W2, so now you just have the same problem all over again. Why isn't C grounded in those facts in W2?
It just pushes the problem down a level. You get an infinite regress.
Exactly. Conditional grounding doesn't help, because the conditions are always inside the hierarchy of facts. We need something that stands outside the hierarchy and governs it.
And this brings us to the core idea of CGP grounding laws.
This is the solution. The proposal is that grounding itself operates according to general law-like principles.
The analogy to causation is really helpful here, I think.
It is. I mean, we don't think that when one event causes another, it's just a one-off brute fact. We think it happens because of a general law of nature. C-type events cause E-type events.
So grounding is like a kind of metaphysical causation. It's not building things through time, but through levels of reality. And just like causation, it's governed by laws.
That's the idea. The physical facts P are like the ingredients. But the grounding law, L, is the recipe. It's the set of instructions that says how to combine those ingredients to get a final product, like consciousness.
I like that. The law isn't one of the ingredients itself.
No, and that's absolutely crucial. This introduces a concept called grounding separatism. The grounding laws are not part of the ground. They aren't additional facts that partly ground the outcome.
So when we say Jane's pain M is grounded in her brain state, P, we don't say it's grounded in P and the law L.
Correct. L is not part of the physical input. L is the rule that allows the input P to generate the output M. It stands outside the hierarchy and imposes structure on it. This is what stops the infinite regress we saw earlier.
So this gives us a new definition. Grounding law is physicalism. Mental facts are grounded in physical facts according to psychophysical grounding laws.
And now for the final, absolutely critical move.
The laws are contingent.
The laws themselves are metaphysically contingent. This is the whole game. The law L that holds in our world, W1, can simply fail to hold in another possible world, like W2.
So now we have a perfect explanation for the difference between our world and the zombie world. In W1, the physical facts P exist, and the law L exists, which says P grounds M, and so M results.
And in W2, the exact same physical facts P exist, but the law L does not exist. Maybe a different law L prime exists that says P does not ground M.
The fundamental stuff is the same in both worlds, but the cosmic rulebook is different. Zombies live in a universe with a different set of assembly instructions.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, but I have to push back here. This feels like we've just moved the goalposts. If this law, L, is the thing that makes consciousness happen, and it's contingent, it's not necessitated by the physics, then isn't L just a new, non-physical fundamental thing?
That is the big objection. Yes.
It sounds like we've just replaced property dualism with law dualism. It's still something extra that God had to add to the universe besides the physics. How is this still physicalism?
The defense is subtle, but it's there. The contingentist has to argue that a law is not a thing, in the same way a mental property would be in dualism. Dualism says there's a new kind of stuff, or property. CGP says the fundamental stuff is all physical. The law is just a principle that governs how that stuff is structured.
But if it's contingent, it's not determined by the physics, it floats free.
It does, but we already accept this elsewhere. We generally believe the laws of nature, like the law of gravity, are themselves contingent. The gravitational constant could have been different, yet we don't think that makes planets non-physical.
That's a good point.
By analogy, the grounding laws are just the metaphysical laws that govern how derivative reality is built. The contingency is in the structure of the universe, not in the addition of some new non-physical entity.
So for this to work, you have to have a very specific view of what's possible and what isn't.
You do. You have to reject the idea that these metaphysical laws flow from the essences of things. Because if the law connecting P and M was part of the essence of P, it would be necessary and zombies would be impossible.
So you need a broader view of possibility.
Yes, something like the Finian view, where what's possible is constrained by the essences of things. The essence of pain might be purely about what it feels like. The essence of C fibers firing is purely about physics. There's nothing in their essences that demands they be connected.
So a world where they aren't connected is possible.
Exactly. Zombie worlds are genuinely possible because they don't violate the essences of the things involved. They're just worlds that operate under a different set of contingent grounding laws. This is how CGP tries to have it both ways. It grants the dualists their intuition about possibility, but saves the core of physicalism. #tag heavy A, opaque grounding in essence.
All right, so if we accept this idea of contingent psychophysical laws, we have to explain why other grounding relations seem so necessary.
Yes, that's a key internal challenge. I mean, the example of scarlet and red comes up a lot. It seems absolutely impossible for something to be scarlet but not be red.
That connection feels like it's built into the very concepts themselves. It's not contingent.
And CGP agrees. That kind of connection is what the source calls essence-mediated grounding. The link is necessary because it's baked into the essence of the properties. The very nature of being scarlet includes being red. And since essences hold true in all possible worlds, that grounding connection is also necessary in all worlds.
So CGP isn't saying all grounding is contingent, it's making a distinction.
It's drawing a line between grounding that's rooted in essence and the kind we need for the mind-body problem.
Which is called opaque grounding.
Opaque grounding, yes. This is when the connection between the ground G and the grounded thing F is not mediated by their essences. The mind-body link pain being grounded in C fibers firing is the classic example.
And it's opaque because there's nothing in the essence of pain that points to C fibers and nothing in the essence of C fibers that points to pain.
Right. The connection feels arbitrary from a metaphysical point of view. It's not transparent to us. And so it's not backed by essence. It's backed by one of these essence-independent contingent grounding laws, Al.
So this gives us a more refined picture. It's not just necessity, but conditional necessitation.
Exactly. The rule is, if you have the ground, G, and the contingent law, L, obtains, then you necessarily get the grounded fact, F. The connection is solid and deterministic in our world because the law L holds here. But it's not universally necessary because L doesn't hold everywhere.
And what's really interesting is that this idea of opaque grounding might solve other philosophical puzzles too, not just consciousness.
The source suggests it has a much broader scope, yeah. Think about metaethics.
Yeah.
The debate about whether moral facts, like goodness, can be grounded in natural facts, like what causes pleasure.
Moore's open question argument.
Precisely. CGP would say, yes, the normative can be grounded in the descriptive, but it's an opaque grounding. The connection is made by a contingent law, not by the essences of the properties.
And the same for secondary qualities. Colors, tastes, sounds.
The possibility of a Galilean world, a world with our physics but no perceived colors, suggests the link between a physical surface property and the experience of red is also contingent. It's grounded, but opaquely.
But in all these cases, mind, morals, colors, the derivative property is still considered physicalistically acceptable.
Yes, because it's still fully grounded in the fundamental physical facts. The contingency of the law doesn't change the fact that the physical is what's fundamental. #Try and be. The question of physicalism and reductive explanation.
Okay, let's hit the big one. Does CGP really deserve to be called physicalism? The traditional view is that true physicalism requires a real definition of mental states in purely physical terms.
And a real definition is supposed to be necessary, right? If you say, to be pain is to be in physical state phi, that identity has to hold in all possible worlds.
But CGP explicitly denies that. By allowing for zombies, it says there's a possible world where you have phi without pain, so it seems to fail the reductionist test.
It does, and this is where CGP has to be very clever. It has two possible responses. The first is what's called the quasi-reductive option.
How does that work?
It provides a real definition, but it does so by including the contingent law in the definition itself.
So you don't just say pain is C fiber firing.
No, you say, to be in pain, in our world, is to be in the state of C fibers firing, and for the contingent psychophysical law L to be in effect.
So you define pain as a complex property that includes both the physical state and the local cosmic rulebook.
Exactly. You define the mental property by both the matter and the rulebook it comes with. This new complex property is necessarily linked to pain, but because the property itself contains a contingent element, the law L, it only exists in worlds where L holds.
It's a very slick move. It provides a definition using only physicalistically acceptable parts, the physical state and the law, without needing universal necessity. What's the other option?
The other option is even more radical. It's the radically non-reductive option. This one just bites the bullet.
How so?
It says maybe mental properties have wholly phenomenal essences. Maybe the essence of pain is just its raw feel, and it knows nothing about its physical ground or the law that connects them.
But wait, that sounds exactly like property dualism. If the essence of pain is purely phenomenal and separate from the physical, how is that not dualism?
This all comes down to the distinction between fundamentality and derivation. It's about priority.
Right. Let's go back to the core commitments.
CGP says two things. One, the fundamental level is wholly physical. Two, everything else, including the mental, is derivative and fully grounded in that fundamental level.
And property dualism denies that.
Property dualism says the mental is a new kind of fundamental property. It's an addition to the basic furniture of the world. CGP says the mental is derivative. It's on the same ontological level as, say, biology or chemistry. It's built from the physical, even if the connection is contingent, and its essence is phenomenal.
The contingency doesn't make it fundamental.
No, it's a wide physical fact because it's fully grounded in the narrow physical facts. This is the core difference. Physicalism is about priority, not necessity.
The analogies in the source material are really helpful here. The baseball, for instance.
Right. We all agree a baseball is a physical object, but its existence is contingent. If the laws of composition, the rules for how particles stick together, were different, then the same collection of atoms might not form a baseball at all.
So the baseball's existence is only contingently grounded in its particles. But the contingency of the law doesn't make the baseball non-physical.
Of course not. Or think about dispositions. A glass is fragile. That disposition is grounded in its molecular structure, but only thanks to the contingent laws of nature. In a world with different laws, that same structure might not be fragile.
But the disposition is still a physical property because it's grounded in the physical base.
Exactly. And for CGP, mental states are just like that. They are derivative facts whose grounding is contingent, but whose existence is still entirely dependent on the physical ground floor.
There's one more layer to this defense, though. The issue of constitutive explanation.
Yes, the idea that physicalism has to provide a non-causal explanation of the mental in physical terms.
And there's this constraint, Durasit's determination constraint, which says that if gamma explains delta, there can't be any possible world with gamma, but without delta.
Which is exactly what CGP seems to violate with its zombie worlds. You have the physical ground, gamma, without the mental fact, delta.
So does CGP just have to give up on providing a constitutive explanation?
No, it has a way out. It goes back to that grounding separatism idea. It argues that the metaphysical explanation for why someone is in pain isn't just the physical facts. The complete explanation has to cite both the physical facts and the grounding law.
So the explanation isn't P, it's P plus L.
Precisely. Let's define a complex property, G star, as having the physical state P and being in a world where law L holds. The full explanation for the mental state M is that the person instantiates G star.
And since G star includes the law L by definition, there is no possible world where G star exists but M does not.
And so the determination constraint is satisfied. CGP can provide a full constitutive explanation as long as we understand that the explanation must include the contingent law that makes the connection happen. It's a very robust defense. Hashtag APELRS. The puzzle of mixed worlds. Okay, so CGP can handle our world and a pure zombie world. But there's another trickier challenge. The mixed world.
A single world, W3, that contains both conscious people like us and their physically identical zombie twins, all existing at the same time.
Right. A lot of philosophers argue that if zombie worlds are possible, mixed worlds should be too. You can use something like David Lewis's patchwork principle to argue you can just sort of cut and paste them together.
But this creates a huge problem for CGP's grounding laws, doesn't it?
It creates a major incoherence problem. If the grounding law L in our world says P grounds M, and the law in the zombie world says P does not ground M, you can't have both laws be universal in a single mixed world. A universal law can't give two different outputs for the exact same input.
The rulebook for reality has to be consistent within a given world. Otherwise, the whole framework just breaks down. So how can CGP allow for mixed worlds?
Well, the contingentist only has to show that they are possible, not that they're normal or elegant worlds. The solutions are, admittedly, a bit weird.
Let's start with the first one, indeterministic laws.
So instead of the grounding law being deterministic, P guarantees M, the law could be probabilistic. It could say that when physical state P obtains, there's, say, a 90% chance that it grounds M.
Like radioactive decay, you can have two identical atoms and one decays while the other doesn't, just due to quantum chance.
Exactly the same principle. In a mixed world, you could have billions of people with the physical state P. For 90% of them, the law fires and they become conscious. For the other 10%, due to metaphysical chance, the law doesn't fire and they remain zombies.
So you get a mixed world where the difference between a person and their zombie twin is just a matter of cosmic luck.
It's a coherent mechanism. It allows for the possibility.
Okay, the second solution sounds even stranger. Region index laws.
This one definitely stretches the imagination. The idea here is that the grounding laws aren't strictly universal across all of space within a single world.
So the rulebook for reality could have geographical exceptions.
In a sense, yes. The law might say something like, physical state P grounds mental state M unless you're in the Andromeda galaxy. Or, as the source amusingly puts it, unless you're in Australia.
Wait, hold on. Aussies are the zombies. That seems completely arbitrary. Aren't fundamental laws supposed to be universal?
It is arbitrary, but the defense is that the law L was already contingent and therefore fundamentally arbitrary to begin with. If the law itself is contingent, maybe its scope can be too. The key thing is that this model avoids local incoherence.
What do you mean by that?
A conscious person and their zombie twin can't be standing side by side because the law in that specific location would have to be consistent. But if one is in Europe and the other's in Australia, they could be physical duplicates while being governed by different local versions of the grounding law.
It's a very strange picture of the universe, but I can see how it logically proves the possibility of a mixed world. The framework has the tools to deal with it. ###B, reframing supervenience and necessity.
All of this, the entire CGP framework, forces us to completely rethink some core concepts in metaphysics. We have to formally throw out traditional mind-body supervenience, or MBS.
Which was the bedrock of physicalism for so long. The idea that once you fix the physical facts, you fix all the facts, period.
And CGP shows that that picture is just incomplete. The old idea that all God had to do was set the physical facts is wrong. God had to do two things. Set the physical facts, P, and choose the contingent grounding laws, L.
So we need a new refined version of supervenience.
We need mind-body supervenience star, MBS.
And what does that say?
It says, for any possible world, if W is a physical duplicate of our world, and if W has the same grounding laws as our world, then it will be a complete mental duplicate too.
That makes perfect sense. The mental depends on both the physical substrate and the rulebook. If you only duplicate the substrate, The outcome is still contingent on which rulebook is active in that world.
Right. And the zombie world W2 is just a world that has our physical facts, but not our grounding laws.
So what's left of the idea of necessity?
What's left is a restricted necessitation. The grounding connection isn't globally necessary, but it's conditionally necessary. If M is grounded in P according to law L, then in any world where L holds, P will necessitate M.
So the connection is solid and necessary, but only within the set of worlds that share our cosmic rulebook.
Exactly. And this model makes sense of all those other cases we talked about: composition, dispositions, secondary qualities. They also seem to be only contingently connected to their physical grounds, but we still consider them fully physical.
By shifting the focus of physicalism from absolute necessity to dependence and priority, CGP gives a systematic way to argue that zombies, even if they're possible, are just not a threat. #outro. So to sum this all up, contingent grounding physicalism seems to provide a really robust way for the physicalist to escape what was always seen as their biggest problem. It neutralizes the zombie argument.
It does. It basically says to the dualist, you were right about one thing, the connection is contingent, but then it says you were wrong about what follows from that. It keeps the core of physicalism, which is that the mental is derivative and grounded in the physical.
And this has a huge implication. It means that this centuries-old debate, which has been almost entirely about modality, about necessity versus contingency, might just be over.
Obsolete.
The main weapon used against physicalism for all this time, the possibility of zombies, is shown to be completely compatible with a sophisticated form of physicalism.
So all that philosophical energy that was spent arguing about whether zombies are conceivable was, in a way, misdirected. According to this view, yes. The central question in the philosophy of mind needs to change.
So if the battleground isn't modality anymore, what is it? What's the new central issue that CGP puts on the table?
The focus has to shift completely to priority relations. We need to stop asking if the physical must produce the mental in all possible worlds. Instead, we should be asking, in our world, is the mental plausibly regarded as being grounded in the physical? What are the actual priority relations here and now?
We're moving from a modal question, what must be, to an ontological one. What is the fundamental structure of our reality? That's a huge shift.
It is, and it leaves us and you with one last really deep, reflective question.
Okay.
If the mental is just contingently grounded in the physical, and the only difference between our world and a zombie world is this contingent grounding law, L, this cosmic rulebook, what's the status of that law itself?
Does the law L need its own, even deeper explanation?
Or is the contingency of that rulebook just the deepest, most fundamental, brute fact of our universe? A sort of arbitrary setting that just happened to define our specific reality?
Is the contingency of the rulebook itself a necessary feature of reality? Something to think about as you look around our world. W1. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.